is a need for an executive session under Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402, parentheses 4 and E, contract negotiations, board to discuss matter subject to negotiation. Do we have a second on that?
Motion?
Or a motion?
So moved.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Monica, please?
Aye.
He's excused for tonight.
That's fine.
Okay, there is a need for a study session concerning the budget. So we will begin at 5:54. Okay, it's all yours, Sandy.
Okay, we'll give Monica just a chance to come up, but I've given you the PowerPoint in front of you. It's the color one, so we can start. This is just a continuation of our conversations we've had in the past, and the framework looks the same as what we did the last time. I just added some of the details from the negotiated agreements that we spoke about. So I just wanted to remind us that when you're developing a budget, that it's kind of a mathematical equation, that we start with the beginning fund balance, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We add our current revenue stream, our anticipated expenditures, and that equals the ending fund balance. So that's kind of how the math works when you're developing a budget. As long as the ending fund balance is a positive number, that's considered a balanced budget in the state of Colorado, and actually anywhere. So to review, we're still anticipating that our beginning fund balance for the general fund will be $15,361,707. I'm estimating that our revenue for this school year that we're getting ready to wrap up will be $64.7 million, and our expenditures will be $63.2. And our reserves will increase from 13.8 to 15.3 based on our early estimates. We'll have audited numbers in October, November, and that'll give us a better final picture when we come back in December to shore up the budget to actuals. When we look at the estimated beginning fund balance for July 1st, we've talked about this. It looks the same as it has in the other meetings, where we have $170,000 in our warehouse type items. We have $2.5 million estimated for Tabor. The Colorado Preschool Project, we're estimating it'll have about $240 unspent. We're estimating a reserve for BOCES. We still have no additional information yet, but we are earmarking that. The board's 5% designated reserve, and an undesignated of 4.7 to make up the $15,361,000. I am asked all the time, how do we mathematically get to this equation? And to be honest with you, it's the undesignated is the difference between what we know is restricted and the total amount. So we know the total amount, and we just have to break it out into categories. So the undesignated becomes what's left over that's not designated or restricted for some purpose. As we look at revenue, we're estimating that our funded pupil count is going to decrease by 3, and so that's funded pupil count, not actual count. And that our School Finance Act revenue will increase by $178. As the School Finance Act finalized since our last get-together, I had shared that it was looking like they would not increase the negative factor, which they did not, which provided us about $200,000 additional revenue that we didn't have. And I had that projected in our budgets that we talked about 2 weeks ago. This is just a recap of some of the changes in our revenue throughout the year. We'll see increases in some categories and decreases in others. And so I'm estimating that our revenue will actually go down by $63.7 million. And that is because of an additional transfer out to the capital reserve and the insurance fund to cover our needs in the capital project funds and insurance. And so that has us actually with less revenue than where we were for 16-17. In our expenditures, Salaries and benefits is our number one expenditure in the district. And for our certified staff, we have budgeted a 2.8% increase to the salary table. There will be educational movements, which is known as lanes, but they will not step. And so if you are on step 1, you will be on step 1 next year. If you're on step 5, you will be on step 5 next year. So that's an important note. For classified staff, we'll see a 2.5% increase to the salary table, and they will take a step in February, which is half the cost, so there's some savings by delaying the step. Same with support and tech, only they'll take their step in January. For administration, there'll be a 0.5% increase to the salary table and a step in July, in just a month here. Our benefits, para increased by 0.5%. It's going from 19.65% to 20.15% on average for next year. Our healthcare actually saw a 4% decrease to the district this year, which is a huge celebration with other healthcare costs rising around the nation. So for this, the total packages were $1.7 million or 3.6%. And when you add in the para increase, it's a 4% raise. When we allocate staffing out to the buildings based on a per student projection ratio, buildings are given the targeted student ratios in their core content area. So I wanted to remind us what those targets are. There is no policy or directive that says they can't go over this, but this is the range within we try to target to staff that building principals use. We do have the referendum still from 1996 that's generating $4.8 million. And I always like to remind us what those purposes were, which was to restore or enhance, at the time, eliminated programs, which was music, art, PE, CTE, and the middle school athletics program. And we've spent some time speaking about how other districts have eliminated middle school athletics, but we continue to offer that, which does create some challenges for us to have a competitive competition out there as other schools have backed away from middle school. It provides operating funds for programs intended to increase graduation rates, keep students in school, improve reading, writing, all grade levels, K through 12. And there is a piece that goes towards our technology infrastructure that has been about $450,000. So if we recap our expenditures by the objects, our estimated salaries and benefits, salaries are $41.6 million, and the benefits will be $13.36 million for the general fund. The purchase services, supplies, and other expenditures will be $8.7, and that includes utilities. And as we spoke about the last board meeting, the undesignated reserve use of $2.2 million for curriculum adoption and a second phase in of Chromebooks. And then we are going to appropriate the board's reserve and what's left of the undesignated reserve of $6.2 million. We did this last year. It cannot be spent without board approval designating where to spend that. So it's an important distinction. You're appropriating it so you set the legal threshold to spend it if something comes up, but it still requires board approval to spend anything from that source. So we're estimating the appropriation in the general fund to be $72 million for next year. I wanted to recap the staffing. This is the staffing for all funds throughout the district. So we have 50 administrators, 457 certified staff. These are FTE, so not bodies. That's why classified is 301.86. And 57 support and tech for a total FTE of 865.86. In the budget book that I handed out to you and you also received electronically, I wanted to have you note for later to look at staffing numbers. And so pages 62, they're the last two pages, 62 and 63. give you a site location of the FTE, and page 63 gives you historical picture of the budgeted FTE to actual FTE over the course of time. And then I'm just recapping our revenue and expenditures. And you'll see in this slide that I'm saying we're going to spend 2.4 million, and you're saying, Sandy, you said it would only be 2.2. There was 243,000 unspent from the preschool project fund that can only be spent on preschool, and that's being appropriated for their program usage as well. So that's why it's 2.4, but it's not tapping into any other board's reserves. So at the end of next year, I estimate reserves to go from $15.3 million to $12.9 million if we use all of those resources. And here's how the fund balance would break out. A year from now, we would still have a board policy of Tabor for 2.5, the board policy of 5% at 3.6 million, the stuff in the warehouse of 170. And again, assigned is the potential insurance reserve of 4 million. I don't believe, if we are designating a reserve of 4 million, I don't believe we'll get it back by the end of next year. And then the undesignated of 2.5, leaving us $12.9 million in our reserves at a year from now. Now, this is assuming that the budget plan is spent exactly as the plan. And so it's a plan, but plans change. Revenues change throughout the year. They may go up, they may go down, depending on our October count of pupil or any other sources of revenue that may come in. And our expenditures are based on what we know today. But sometimes we have vacancies, and not everybody is hired on the first day, and those create savings. But we create a budget as if everybody's in their seats so that we have a plan to spend the resources. Here's some examples of some budget reductions that have already taken place that are in this budget. There's been one administrative FTE and one support and tech FTE that was eliminated during the year that did not roll forward into this budget. And then we have other funds. So we have a risk management fund that we've talked about that covers the cost of our insurance premiums. We have our food service fund, the government designated purpose grant fund. This is where all the federal, state, and local grants are reported. We have fees supported, which accounts for programs that are supported by fees, such as adult ed, the print shop, before and after school daycare programs. We have a debt service fund where we collect property tax revenue for the sole purpose of paying the interest and principal payments on our outstanding debt. Those dollars cannot be redirected to any other purpose other than to pay off bonded debt. And then we have capital projects fund. And the word reserve, because it's called a capital reserve fund under the state's chart of account, can be confusing because it kind of sounds like the other reserves we talk about. And so capital is just the name of the fund, but it's a project fund.
Yeah,
Mr. Rolla.
Sandy, going back to that special revenue
Yes.
funds where we're charging our students, when we collect that money, does that go back into that fund for, say, athletics? Does it go into athletic funds, or does it go back into the general fund?
It stays within the fund that collected the fees. So for example, athletics, if we are collecting an athletic participation fee, that stayed within the athletic fund as part of its overall operation. It was a revenue source to its total operation. The same with gate receipts would be another example of revenue that comes into the athletic fund. They're not very much money, but there's $30,000 that go towards the support of our athletics program, and the general fund supports the rest of the athletics.
So on athletics funds, say, for example, do the middle schools have to pay?
I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm sorry. Is there anybody that knows that answer? No. Okay.
Because I'm just saying, because we have to, say football, we have to recondition their helmets just like we do the high school, or the shoulder pads. And if we're not charging them, I mean, over where I coach, everybody has to pay. Middle schools, high schools. Of course, they're not as much as the high school, but they still have some kind of a fun. And
So my only notation in the budget is high school. And high school is charged $75 per sport, or $150 a maximum per student, or a $225 max per family. I don't have an answer if there's middle school. I've made no reference to middle school, so I don't believe there is, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'm happy to get the answer, and we can relay the answer up to you. Under the Capital Projects Fund, it is funded by a transfer from our general fund. So the only source of revenue comes from there, except in the unique example where we did sell the Rosemary property. We do have the proceeds from the sale of that sitting there and designated to purchase a future site at some point in time. But we're projecting that $6.8 million be expended, but that's assuming 3.5 of that is the purchase of a land. If you don't appropriate it and the land comes around, you don't have the legal authority to go spend the 3.5 that you have in your bank account to buy land. So that's why we appropriate it, but it's designated for land.
Looking at that, I know we're not spending that, but are we drawing some interest on that?
There is a little bit of interest. We're now starting to see a slight increase in our interest rates as the feds have increased the long-term interest rates. So there is some, but remember, under the state of Colorado's rules of governing of cash flow, we have to spend all of this cash before we could even step in to borrow money from the state. And we go negative in November and December. We've been able to not, or we have been fortunate enough to not utilize the state loan program for the last 2 years, primarily because we have $3.5 million sitting in the bank that's from the land, and we've had to use that first before we are eligible to use the state loan. So it comes and goes, and then when we collect property taxes, it gets replenished.
So the interest we get, does it stay with that land?
I
or does
believe it
general fund
does.
somewhere else?
It doesn't go into the land, but I believe it goes into the fund. Let me double check. And so, yes, we have budgeted $28,000 to be collected next year in interest income, and that's part of the revenue source that funds the $6.8 million of projects that are listed there. So I wanted to kind of walk through the projects because this is an important topic that we have. We do have an energy performance lease agreement out there. We still have 3 more years on that lease, and that consumes $271,000 from the district's budget. I'm designating $3.5 million to the purchase of land. That is the exact proceeds that we received from the sale of the Rosemary property. We are designating $984,000 to 2 roofing projects, specifically DuPont and Kemp, next year. We have $560,000 in technology projects that are not Chromebooks, so this is the ongoing projects that we've seen in the Cap Reserve Fund to maintain our infrastructure. We will be finishing up the BEST grant, so this is money that was designated in this year's budget but not spent until next year because the clock stops on June 30th, and they'll be working on that roof in July and August. So we're anticipating that $500,000 will roll over into next year's budget to pay for the work on Kearney Middle School's roof from the BEST grant. We are at the end of the useful life of the athletic turf at the high school, and that's estimated to replace the turf $400,000.
Okay, I got a question on that. That turf that's on there is only 8 years long. Most of those turfs that are put are guaranteed at least 20 years. Or how come we're replacing after 8 years the whole?
So I believe, I'm not going to be the right person to answer that, but to repeat what I have heard is that some of the blades are now laying down and they're not standing up anymore, and that's wear and tear on the turf over the last 8 years. And I don't know what the product is, but our maintenance director is referencing that it is at the end of its useful life. So I don't know what the purchase was, if it was a 20-year product or if it was a 10-year product in the past.
The one that hasn't met maybe are we looking at other
I haven't been involved in that, so I couldn't answer those details. I think that's probably a great question for our operations team to give you some updates on the Friday update, what that would look like.
Well, it came to us in the Friday updates, but we
Oh,
can't
okay.
talk to them on the Friday at
Oh,
5
okay.
o'clock p.m. And I don't see no operations out there because do they have a warranty? We don't even see a warranty that came in with it.
Yeah, it's outside
just
of,
asking for $400,000, and where's the warranty for it? Did they talk to anybody, professionals, anybody? I don't see nobody out here that can answer these questions. Now, that's
I know.
not towards you.
no.
But we're going over the budget, and this is they part of the budget, so I don't think that's,
This is a small consolation, but these projects are all greater than $15,000, so nothing can happen until the board approves the project as well. So take some small comfort in that these will come back before you before any projects start, because they're greater than the board policy of 15,000 requiring board approval. So not that we shouldn't get you the answer that you need.
are they
And
gonna be here, Dr. Brago? Because I still have other
Yes.
questions
We have other people
prior
that are
to
coming in.
that,
okay,
prior
yeah.
to this here.
Yeah, we have people will be here for the board meeting.
Instructional equipment, we did replace the copiers throughout the district this year. Copiers are a key part of our instructional program. We also set aside about $100,000 that's divvied out to each building to replace instructional equipment in each of those buildings. And that can be unique to each building based on their program needs at their building. And so that's the $300,000 there. We are dedicating equipment for nutritional services of $72,000. I believe these are steamers and tilt skillets at least 2 locations, probably 3. And then we always like to set aside a contingency. So for example, a couple of board meetings ago, you approved an HVAC system for the technology server room here. Those weren't known when we adopted the budget a year ago, and so we try to set aside a little bit amount of money that can go towards those unknown projects that you don't know when you're developing the budget today. So we're setting aside a little bit of a contingency to cover any of these known projects or anything that might be unknown. And then we have safety areas where we test all of the fire extinguishers throughout the district. They need to be tested every year. We have indoor air quality reports that are required, safety equipment that are utilized throughout the district. And then some of the good news that we were initially budgeting $900,000 for the fire code door lock issue. And this $200,000 is a carryover from this year's $300,000 that was budgeted and not spent. So Scott has indicated he's able to do this entire project in-house now at the $300,000. So that allowed us to add the turf and some food service and the roofing into the current revenue stream from the fund. So that makes up $6.8 million of proposed projects for next year out of the cap reserve fund. I want to make sure that we've addressed at least the questions I can answer as we go through there, but this is an important, and I think the board has asked me, can you redirect the $3.5 million for the land? You can redirect that to another capital project, but that is our only source of funding right now if we are in a place to purchase land. So those are the pros and cons as that's being considered. And the last screen was just a reminder of our calendar. So we will publish the public hearing to be on June 13th. And right now, absent any other direction from the board, we will plan on bringing an appropriation to be adopted and approved at the next board meeting for your budget for 2017-18. And I've put a draft on the first page of this budget book that you've now got paper instead of virtually, and that'll be a draft of what the resolution will look like. And so your appropriation is setting your threshold of what can be spent by each fund. And that's actually the legal action of adopting the budget. You will have a second appropriation, which is authorizing the use of reserves in each fund, and that we're not using them on ongoing costs, and we're aware that we're using those. So you'll have two resolutions to look at the next board meeting. And with that, I'll open it up to your questions and directions.
Is there any questions for Sandy? Okay, hearing none, Sandy, you're off the board.
Off the hot seat? All right, thank you.
Okay, I guess at this time we'll bring it into the budget, which is at 6:20. We have 10 minutes before the regular board meeting. Call this meeting to order on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017 at 6:33. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get started, just like to recognize Mr. Steve Douglas from the City Council, who's usually our liaison between council and the school board. Just like to welcome him and thank you for coming to our meetings. Okay, can we have roll call, Monica, please? Here. He's excused. Here.
Here.
Approval of the minutes for May 9th. I need a motion for the approval of the minutes on May 9th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call, Monica?
Aye.
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 Need a motion for the approval of the minutes on May 17th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a discussion? Hearing none, can I have roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Before we approve the agenda, there is a need to amend the agenda. There is a need to amend the agenda this evening to replace personnel action with an update version and business item 2.1 under other FBLA recommendation with an update version, and to remove business item 2.12 under other. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have roll call? Monica?
Aye.
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 Moving on to F, to the approval of the agenda as amended. Need a
So-
motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, is there a discussion? Can we have roll call, Monica, please?
Aye.
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 Moving on to audience comments. Just like to remind the individuals that are speaking that please state your name. You have 3 minutes to speak. No ceding of time between speakers will be permitted. All comments need to be district-related. Your comments can suggest improvements but should be productive. You can provide a written statement to the board for review. The president can recognize a board member or the superintendent to respond to questions to clarify a district's position. At this time, Barb McDowell.
Barb McDowell, 303 Bridget Drive, Northglenn, Colorado. Good evening, President Rolla, Superintendent Abrego, distinguished members of the board. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Classroom Teachers Association. Just wanted to let you know that the contract was ratified and the members were notified this evening regarding the contract for 2017-2018. Also, I was reelected as president for the next 2 years. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Next individual, I hope I pronounced it right, Patricia Wedingale.
Hi, I'm Patricia Wedgell Bayless, and I submitted a letter to the school board last Tuesday, the 17th. I'm here for 2 reasons. One, I was hoping for a confidential meeting in response to my letter, and/or instead of me writing the letter, because I just heard you say that, was I supposed to download it instead to the website? Because I saw that earlier this week, and I didn't know what the process, if I could get clarification on the process.
Dr. Abrego,
Um,
or is personnel here? Is Dr. Patterson here?
I think Dr. Patterson's here, but we usually don't respond immediately. We take the question and then we respond at the following
Okay,
meeting.
so you'll get a response from Dr. Patterson here before the next board meeting.
Okay, and do I need to download it on that website as well?
That's what the information she's gonna give you.
She'll,
She'll give you all the information on how to do it.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Daniel Archuleta.
Good evening, Superintendent Abrego, President Rolla, distinguished members of the board. I have a prepared statement I would just like to read. I regret to inform you that I have resigned from my position as Manager of Strategy and Accountability. My last day will be June 30th, and I wanted to take this time to thank you and to thank all of Adams 14. During these past few years, I've gained many friends, as well as a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I hope that my work impacted student learning positively. Serving my hometown community has been truly been an honor and a privilege, and I'll always support the success of every student in Adams 14. You might be asking why, and to put it simply, for now, the priorities of the district and my own expertise and skills are not in alignment. However, priorities are often cyclical, so when the need for my skills arises again, please don't hesitate to contact me. I want to leave you with just 3 recommendations. The first, explore and develop a strategic architecture. I believe the last time we had a strategic plan in the district was February of 2013. A strategic architecture will build a flexible pathway into the future that is robust and is resilient to change in personnel. Number 2, use and advance the Unified Improvement Planning System. This was developed last year. And number 3, explore the potential in developing an Adams 14 accountability system as an alternative to the state's performance frameworks. Again, thank you for this tremendous opportunity over these past few years. I wish all of you the greatest success.
I'd just like to say thank you, Daniel, for all the hard work you put in since I've known you the last couple of years, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
I'd like to say, thank you, Daniel. You did a lot of work with the DAC and the BAC programs and the UIPs ever since I've been on this board. And I know sometimes we bumped heads, but it was in the best interest of Adams 14. And I wish you best in your success, whatever you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was in other duties, I believe, in my job.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'd like to just thank you, Daniel, for all the support and everything for, that you've shown myself.
Thank you, Mr. Archuleta.
Thank you very much for all of your continued success and your services here.
It's truly been a pleasure and an honor. Thanks.
Moving on, Stephanie Levine.
Good evening, Stephanie Levine. Good evening, President Rolla, Superintendent Abrego, and esteemed members of the board. I'm speaking to you today on 2 accounts. The first as a member of the special education team at Adams City High School, and the second as Adams City High School Student Council Advisor. Unfortunately, I've been struggling with the words to put together to express my feelings about the end of this year in regards to our special education team. We've been through so much, made amazing progress, and I've been so proud to be a part of it. We have put together data that has never been collected, employed interventions that have never been done, and found great success for our students with IEPs in the general education classroom. This has all been done under the direction of an irreplaceable department chair, as well as an AP that goes above and beyond to support us. Neither of those people were asked to return to our school, and I consider that a massive threat to the continued success for our students as well as our staff. Amanda Gonzalez, as our department chair, was there to support students and teachers alike with all questions and needs regarding IEPs, data, added support, effective needs, and the list truly goes on. It absolutely baffles me that the decision was made not to keep such an important teacher and mentor in our school at a time when she is needed so much. The last straw to me speaking to you all today was the decision under board and superintendent approval to take our school down from 2.5 school psychologists to 1. I do realize that there are outside agencies that also provide services to our students, but given the fact that we get new ones almost every year, the relationships are not nearly as strong. Our students and staff alike have thrived on the relationship built with our school psychologists, and some students really do only come to school because of their relationships with people like Mrs. Height and Mrs. Newcomb, neither of which will be returning to the building, and one of whom did not have that choice. So now again, at a time when our kids so desperately need consistency and stability, what they get instead is a mass exodus of teachers and staff, and that number seems to be rising every single day. I sincerely hope that in the future more thought is put into these decisions and the voices of students and staff who are in the building are heard, as they are the ones who face the repercussions of decisions made by those who are not. Now, to speak on behalf of our unbelievable student leaders. For the past 3 years, I have had the pleasure of supporting our student council. These students are some of the most motivated, brilliant, resilient, and perseverant human beings on this planet. This year is no different. ACHS has elected amazing leaders to speak on their behalf to their administration, to their community, and to you, to make sure that their students' voices are heard. And I'm here to tell you that they will not stop at being heard. They will stop when they are listened to. I do believe that there is potential for trust, and I do believe that our students will get us there. What I ask of you all is that you really listen, that you truly understand what they are asking for and why. That these students are leaders begging for support and helping them to do their job. I hold them accountable for what they were elected to do, and in turn, they have vowed to hold you all accountable for what you were elected to do. Although a lot has happened this year, I see some serious opportunity for you all to begin to dig a little bit deeper in what our students need, to step up to the plate, get into our school, talk to our students, and support them directly. With all this being said, I sincerely hope that we can learn some important lessons and start making decisions truly in the best interest of our students and their futures. Thank you.
Trini Ornalis.
Good evening, board members. My name is Trinity Ornelas, and I am now a junior at Adams City High School. This year, I was selected by my peers to be a part of Student Council as our class representative. It is my job to represent our class and make it possible for their voices to be heard as well. Hopefully, with the new school year, new administration, things will run more smoothly at Adams City High School. I moved to Adams City from Victory Prep to start my freshman year because I was excited to go to the community high school. There was new opportunities, and my parents wanted me to have a rich high school experience. My freshman year, I was a part of student council, and that was a great year. I met students who loved their school, who were very involved, and who were taking many rigorous courses. I looked up to them, and now I am one of them. This year, I was a part of planning and organizing the walkout that happened. I was even a part of the 6 kids that Dr. Abrego asked to meet with the day before we did the walkout. I was glad to see that our student body could be united and come together for one purpose. I hope that this next school year, we as Student Council and you as members of the board can work together to get the community more involved. My vision since elementary school was to have the entire community at the Friday night football games and to have the huge homecoming parade that everyone was looking forward to. Our community is small enough to have the entire community involved. We need your help to ensure that Student Council keeps running well by finding us and improving our plans that we tried to create. Student Council helps create more opportunities so students can also be involved. When students are involved, they try harder in school and enjoy school way more. You say you want academic achievement? I challenge you to increase student involvement because being involved in schools is what causes students to attend school and care about keeping our school open. Hopefully we can work together to create a successful year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan Carson?
Good evening, Dr. Abrego and board members. Tonight I'd like to say, first of all, thank you. Although teachers would like to have been more represented on the principal hiring committee, we are grateful that one of us was there, one for whom we have a great deal of respect. And we're grateful that you respected the voices on that team. We are hopeful that it is a sign that we are beginning to nurture a healthy respect between admin, teachers, students, parents, and board members, all in better service to our students. I'd like to tell you a little about one of my classes. I'm an English teacher, and my 11th graders recently finished reading a book called The Things They Carry by Tim O'Brien. The opening story in the collection is all about the various things soldiers carry into battle. Of course, their weapons, but other physical and emotional burdens as well. Things like letters from girlfriends, canned peaches, Kool-Aid, dental floss, shame, and fear. Together, my students and I analyzed the stories and came to a conclusion that one of O'Brien's purposes was for readers to see and know soldiers in a much more personal way than traditional war stories offer. Why? Maybe because when you really know someone, you won't do anything to put them in harm's way, at least not deliberately. I think that's what our students fear when they say to us, "You don't know us." That not knowing them, we might make decisions that aren't really in their interests. So I began paying closer attention and asked them to write some of the things they carry, so that when I'm making decisions on their behalf, I'm doing right by what they need. I get closer and closer to the right decisions for them. To protect their privacy, I won't name them, but here's a snapshot of some of the things that my students carry. Student A is a mother of a toddler whose own mother was recently hospitalized. She works at Walmart after school from 5 to 10:30 and on weekends. Student B wants to be a medical examiner while student C wants a career in criminal justice. She's feisty and fearless. I wouldn't do anything to get in her way. Student D's parents are not here legally. He feels both society's shame and the fear that any day his parents could disappear. Student E sometimes feels invisible. Student F works at Harkins Theaters after school and on weekends. She does it for herself, but also she does it to help her family with rent and bills. She says the worst part of the job is rude customers. Student G is brilliant, one of the smartest students I've ever had. He's incredibly funny, a sign of his intelligence, and insightful about the world around him. But his test scores and grades aren't likely to tell that story ever. Why? Because he suffers from anxiety, most notably in testing situations. I watched him last week wringing his hands and rubbing his forehead during his final on Friday, and 3 times I asked him what I could do. His choice was to push through. That test did nothing to show how incredibly smart he is. I give you these pictures for the same reason I hold them right here. Because knowing them, I'm not going to waste their time with work that doesn't honor their interests or intelligence. I won't walk into a classroom without preparing, and I will use best practice to the best of my understanding, so I'm providing what they need as students and as human beings who care about the world they live in. And I think as you all hear more of these stories, if you picture these kids and their lives when you're making hiring decisions or budgetary ones, when we're deciding with the few resources we have, do students need another CLO trainer for their teachers, or do they need an experienced, consistent counseling staff? If we see them, if we hear their stories, we will know. Thank you.
Joseph Moloney.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Maloney. I'm an English teacher here at the high school. Good evening, Dr. Abrego, members of the board. Thank you for your time this evening. Last time I was here, I spoke about inconsistencies and lack of leadership in the building. However, I am not going to go down that road again tonight. First, I'd like to thank you, though, for bringing Principal Maldonado and the rest of the new admin into school today. It was great to meet them, and I enjoyed. I'm glad we have a staff in place for next year. However, it was after this meeting, standing in the cafeteria talking to some colleagues, I was approached by a girl, and it was a very interesting and powerful moment. I do not teach this young lady. I believe she's a cheerleader at the school. She's a student council member. I know her through just various events, but I do not know her on a personal level. And she asked me, she said, "Mister, are you coming back next year?" And I looked at her and I said, "Of course. Where else would I go?" And I turned back to my colleagues and continued our conversation. And this young girl walked around the table and gave me a hug, which startled me. It wasn't so much that the hug startled me, but the fact that she said thank you after she hugged me. We've created an environment in our school, whether it's been teachers, past principals, board members, superintendents, but the adults. We've created a culture in which our students are shocked when their teachers return, that they do not believe when their teachers tell them they're returning. I've spoken to teachers who've had students question them over and over as if they didn't believe them that their teachers were coming back. And I wish that I had an answer for why this is the case. I think there's a lot of answers, but I do know this. I know that for far too long, our amazing, talented, unique, and brilliant students have not been our number one concern, and that must change. We must look at ourselves as the adults. We must look at what we are doing and ask ourselves, is this best for our students, or is this best for us? The only way things will get turned around in this district and at Adams City High School and in that building is by reflecting on our past decisions, looking inward, and putting our students first. Our students should not be asking teachers questions like this. Thank you.
That brings an end to audience comments.